Two Navy SEALs arrested by corrupt cop. Shocking courtroom moment when their admiral is revealed. The judge's gavel echoed like a gunshot in the cavernous courtroom, piercing through the suffocating silence. Jake's heart raced as he imagined the headlines splashed across every newspaper and social media feed. Two Navy SEALs arrested by corrupt cop. It should have felt surreal. Instead, it felt like a betrayal from the town he'd always called home. Officer Reynolds stood smugly by the prosecutor's table, the corner of his mouth twisted in a condescending smirk. An unjust accusation. A crime they didn't commit. It was suffocating, and Jake could feel the weight of the community's scrutiny bearing down on him. On the other side of the courtroom, Sam sat, his face stoic, but his eyes flickering with unease. The brotherhood they fought for was crumbling, and the very essence of their bond was stretching thin, snapping under the pressure of the accusations. Jake grappled with doubt. Had they miscalculated? All those years in training, the bonds forged in blood and sweat, were they enough to withstand this? Disgrace loomed like a dark cloud, threatening to suffocate everything they'd earned. The whispered words surrounding them felt like daggers, each aimed squarely at their honor. What does it mean to be a hero? Jake pondered, his thoughts spiraling into chaos. Did courage still exist if you stood falsely accused? A fear gripped him. What if their colleagues turned away, unwilling to stick by them amidst the swirling rumors? As he watched Sam, he struggled with the question hanging heavy between them. Would their friendship triumph over this nightmare, or would the dark shadows of corruption draw them apart forever? Before they continued, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The air grew thicker as moments passed. Jake could feel his pulse quickening, each heartbeat fueling an internal storm. He stole a glance at Officer Reynolds, whose arrogance painted a portrait of false righteousness. The way Reynolds held his chin high almost felt like an invitation, a dare that taunted Jake and Sam to lose their cool, to react violently against a man who was supposed to serve and protect. But to do that would be to play into Reynolds' hands, shattering the honor they had fought to uphold. His mind raced back to Admiral Carter's teachings, values imparted long ago during grueling training routines. Loyalty and integrity shouldn't just be words, yet here was Jake, gripped in a moral fog. Did the betrayal lie with Officer Reynolds, or could it lurk within themselves, casting shadows on their past choices? As guilt gnawed at his insides, he couldn't shake the sensation of being on the edge of a precipice. One wrong move, and everything they valued could plummet into chaos. Then, as if heavens had opened, the courtroom doors swung wide. The Admiral, retired yet steady in his presence, strolled in like a gust of refreshing wind. He held the court's attention as whispers erupted, jaws dropped in disbelief. Jake's breathing hitched. What secrets lay beneath the surface of his mentor's arrival? Would this moment bridge the chasm of despair, or deepen it? Tension reverberated, making Jake's heart pound in resonance with a truth only the Admiral possessed. A truth that threatened to unravel everything they thought they knew about honor, duty, and community. Would they dare confront the storm brewing within, or would they remain prisoners of an unjust world? The answer hung tantalizingly in the balance, a delicate pin ready to snap at any moment. Jake's mind spun as Admiral Carter made his entrance. The familiar figure radiated authority, instantly shifting the focus of the courtroom from the swirling accusations to the power of his presence. He moved deliberately, his gait a reminder of the discipline ingrained in Jake and Sam during their years of service. But this wasn't drill or combat. This was a fight for their honor, and the stakes had never been higher. As the Admiral took his place at the front, whispers of speculation coursed through the courtroom. Did he arrive as a symbol of support, or was there a deeper strategy at play? Jake's heartbeat matched the growing tension. He felt a nervous energy building inside him, a cocktail of hope and apprehension. Could the Admiral's presence shift the scales in their favor? "Your Honor," the Admiral said, his voice calm but firm, lapping over the courtroom like a warm tide. "I stand here today not only as a retired officer, but as a mentor and brother to these men. Their integrity is beyond reproach, and I can vouch for their character on and off the battlefield." His words hung heavy in the air, clinging to the tension like humidity before a storm. For a fleeting moment, Jake felt a flicker of hope. But as he glanced across the room, he noticed the prosecutor's glare hardened, an unyielding wall of resistance. She leaned towards Officer Reynolds, their whispers cutting through Jake's momentary optimism. While the Admiral spoke, Jake's mind flashed with memories of training, of nights huddled together in adversity. Every lesson learned now felt like a lifeline, demanding that he confront his fears and embrace the responsibility of this moment. He realized it was time to break free from the suffocating weight of potential shame that had been pressing down on him. Suddenly, the thought of inaction sent a jolt through his body. There was a fork in the road. Would they remain passive victims of circumstance or rise against the tide? Clenching his fists, he understood that bravery wasn't just about manual confrontation. It was about standing firm in the face of injustice, even if it meant risking further condemnation. "Admiral, if I may," Jake interjected, surprising even himself with the strength in his voice. All eyes turned to him. "This isn't just about proving our innocence. It's about confronting the very system that allows corruption to thrive. We have to take a stand together." The Admiral's brow furrowed, acknowledging the emergence of Jake's resolve. The prosecutor's gaze narrowed, and Jake swore he could feel the gears of a new strategy turning in her mind. The courtroom was now a live wire, buzzing with possibilities as Jake steeled himself, revealing his determination one heartbeat at a time. "Reynolds isn't just here to destroy us," Jake continued, rising from his seat. "He represents something deeper, a corruption that belittles every man and woman in uniform. If we cower in the face of this, we're giving up more than our reputation. We're betraying the entire legacy of what it means to serve." Jake's voice surged, with the passion of a leader awakening within him. The Admiral regarded him with a mixture of pride and caution, weighing the weight of his words. This was not merely a plea for exoneration, it was a call to arms, and he could feel a restless energy rippling through the courtroom. But there was still a storm brewing on the horizon. Jake glanced toward Sam, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. It was a pivotal moment, one where friendship would either uphold their cause or fracture under the strain of fear. Would Sam back him up, or would the shadows of doubt claim the last vestige of their brotherhood? Jake inhaled deeply, grasping the raw potential between them. Whatever lay ahead would require an alliance forged against the darkness. But it had to start now, here in this courtroom, full of adversaries and allies alike. The moment dictated urgency, and the clock started ticking louder in his mind. As the room buzzed with reactions to his declaration, Jake realized that these choices could either illuminate their path or plunge them into deeper chaos. The challenge was far from over, yet it was time to face it head-on. But before he could dwell on what would happen next, the judge banged the gavel again, silencing the tumult but leaving a chilling silence. What repercussions awaited them? Would rebellion galvanize their defense, or would it seal their downfall? The unraveling truth lay just beyond reach. As Jake's heart raced, the palpable silence enveloped the courtroom, his words echoing in the collective consciousness of everyone present. The admittance of their plight revealed vulnerabilities he had scarcely acknowledged. Was he truly prepared to challenge the very system that molded him? He stole a glance at Sam, who sat at the edge of his seat, visibly wrestling with his emotions. Jake understood that this was more than just about winning a case. It was about personal growth, accountability, and the very essence of integrity. Sam's reaction would be monumental. It could reinforce Jake's commitment or plunge it into division. "Your Honor," the judge's voice sliced through the silence like a blade, "the defendant appears to have taken a rather bold stance." The tone was neither dismissive nor supportive, a mirror to the weight of uncertainty looming over Jake. As the judge considered their situation, Jake returned his focus to the Admiral, who showed a glimmer of approval beneath his controlled exterior. That shred of acknowledgement fueled Jake's resolve. He needed to center himself, to think clearly, lest he drift into reactive chaos. Thoughts of their training flooded his mind. The highest stakes involved strategic planning, but Jake found himself in an emotional quandary as well. Barriers of fear threatened to stifle his voice. The courtroom was lined with adversaries, but it was also an audience bearing witness to his character. He had to pave a way forward with eloquence and clarity. Generations of service have built the foundation on which this system stands. Jake began anew, striving for calm authority. Supporting our brothers and sisters means refusing to turn a blind eye. We demand accountability, expose subversion, and uphold honor, even when it's uncomfortable. Each phrase started to carve a stronger connection to his past, memories of camaraderie and shared sacrifices mingling with the present turmoil. Jake was no longer just a defendant. He was becoming a sentinel for those too frightened to voice their struggles against a flawed military hierarchy. This was his revolution. A murmur rippled through the room at that moment, tentative but alive. Sam's gaze flickered with something akin to admiration, as if he too was recognizing the profound nature of their mission. Yet the prosecutor, a figure adorned with authority, leaned forward, her demeanor cool and calculated. "Bold declarations require evidence, Mr. Thompson," she stated with a sharpness that underscored her disbelief. "What you speak of sounds noble, but where is your proof?" Jake felt the wall of skepticism rise. Nothing could be produced to satisfy her. The struggle lay in transforming passion into palpable truth. It was time to leverage what they had learned: strategic advantages, hidden skills, teamwork. He had spent years cultivating resilience, learning to adapt, intercept weaknesses, and harness collaborative strength. Soon enough, he could channel these skills beyond the battlefield, turning them into a weapon of revelation against the corruption that lurked within the system. "Admiral," Jake turned, "if we are to fight this glorified system and reclaim our honor, I need to arrange for evidence that proves not only our innocence, but also the mechanisms of corruption that bind it." The Admiral nodded, understanding the gravity of Jake's request. This was a crossroads, one that could lead to their vindication or their downfall. The courtroom turned electric, the tension thick in the air. Each breath drew them closer, not only to the confrontation with external threats, but also to an internal reckoning with their own principles. With every passing moment, Jake could feel his own transformation solidifying. By deciding to resist the tides of silence, he was claiming his place as a fighter. But with every step forward, Jake sensed a deeper storm brewing. Would the execution of this plan forge a united front, or fracture their alliance in the face of overwhelming odds? What demons awaited them in this uncharted territory? Only time would reveal the depth of their resolve, as old alliances would soon be put to the ultimate test. Would Jake's urge to dismantle the shadows of corruption light a path toward freedom, or lead them into further obscurity? The deafening silence that followed the prosecutor's challenge was punctuated by a biting sense of urgency. Jake's mind raced, images of his fallen comrades flashing before him. Their sacrifices hung heavy in the air, mingling with the weight of his own declaration. He needed more than just words. He needed action and a plan. Rubbing a hand over his face, he gathered his resolve. Time was precious, and every second that slipped away deepened the chasm of uncertainty he had stepped into. "We may not have the evidence on hand, but the fight is just beginning," he declared with newfound confidence, surprised at the conviction that vibrated through him. His voice was steadier, igniting a flicker of hope that danced in the eyes of those seated around him, particularly Sam. "Right now, it's about tactics," Jake whispered to himself as he turned to the Admiral. "We need to think strategically." This would not simply be a fight against the prosecutor, but against a tangled network of deception spread throughout their ranks. The Admiral caught Jake's eye, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. It was an unspoken promise. They would not falter together. Jake's transformation from a passive member of the military to a voice of change was fueled by a sense of duty. But it wouldn't be enough without actionable steps. "Can we access the communication logs from the chain of command?" he asked, his mind sharpening with clarity. "They are bound to have discussed the incidents that led to our wrongful accusations." The Admiral leant forward, intrigued. "That information won't be easily obtained. We would have to leverage existing channels. I can initiate a discreet request that will not raise immediate suspicion." Nodding fervently, Jake envisioned the ramifications. Each thread pulled could unravel the intricate web of deceit. But they needed patience, calculated moves that would not provoke retaliation from the higher-ups. He realized how overwhelmed he felt, battling past decisions that haunted him, the nagging self-doubt facilitating heavy breaths. But with his dawning agency, that doubt began to ebb away. "Every step matters," he said more to himself than anyone else. "If we compile testimonies from fellow SEALs willing to come forward, it'll add credibility. The voices of the many could drown out the singular attack from the prosecutor." The idea was liberating as it solidified his role as a catalyst for change. He envisioned snatching stories from the shadows, amplifying their truths against the corrupt system. Sam leaned into his thoughts, the camaraderie of their training surfacing. "We'll need to approach those who shared similar experiences. It might take time, but—" "Time is a luxury we might not have," Jake interjected, the adrenaline surging through him. He let out a shaky breath, recognizing the stakes at hand. They had to act fast and smart. Their collaboration ignited old instincts. They communicated through subtle glances and nods, a dance honed from years spent relying on each other's unwavering trust. The path lay ahead, fraught with adversity, each decision a test not only of their professional skills, but of their personal integrity. "Would you stand with me, Sam?" Jake asked fiercely, emotions bubbling at the surface. "It's not just about this trial. It's about a future we can change for others." "Always," Sam replied firmly, a spark of determination evident in his eyes. The moment crystallized a sense of purpose that transcended their personal misfortunes. But as they solidified their alliance, doubts flared again. Would the testimonies of their brothers hold weight in the court of law? Might they be met with hostility instead of support? Jake's thoughts spun with contrasting possibilities. His impulse was to safeguard their future, yet behind every action loomed the specter of unforeseen consequences. As the courtroom atmosphere simmered, adrenaline coursed through Jake's veins, driving him to execute a plan. He was no longer merely a voice in the darkness, but a force battling against it. What lay ahead was unclear, but Jake was resolute. His resolve was a fire ignited, ready to illuminate the malignant obscurities hidden in the ranks. This was more than defense. It was the ruthless pursuit of justice. What ramifications awaited him as he began this mission, to reclaim their honor and confront the systemic rot beneath the facade of loyalty? What risks had he unknowingly just opened himself to? Jake's thoughts whirled as he and Sam left the cold, sterile confines of the courtroom for the warmth of the committee meeting room. This was a momentous shift. Instead of merely reacting to accusations, they had chosen to act, to take charge of their narrative. Jake felt a rush of adrenaline, heightened by the colossal stakes that loomed over them. He had to navigate this perilous journey not just with courage, but with meticulous strategy. "Do you think it's even possible?" Sam asked, breaking the silence as they entered the meeting room. The sunlight streaming through the tall windows bathed them in a golden hue, contrasting with the gravity of their discussions. "It has to be," Jake replied, his voice steadier than he felt inside. "There's too much to gain and too much at stake, for ourselves and for those who couldn't stand up." With each word, he felt the remnants of doubt begin to dissolve. He realized that standing up for his comrades meant placing himself in the line of fire. "What's our first move?" Sam prompted, pulling Jake from his introspection. "We need a list of those who might help us. SEALs who were there, who saw what really happened," Jake said, his brain firing on all cylinders. "We need to start compiling testimonies and maybe, if we're lucky, find someone willing to back us publicly. There's strength in numbers." Sam nodded, and Jake could see the determination set in his features. "We should separate tasks. I can start reaching out to our old unit, maybe set up a secure communication line to avoid surveillance." "Good idea," Jake agreed. An inner excitement bubbled within him, and for the first time he felt someone might actually listen. They were no longer alone. There was potential to connect with those who would understand their plight. But another realization struck him. Would their brothers still trust them after everything? What if expectations morphed into animosity because of the disgrace clinging to their names? A weight settled on his shoulders, but he pushed the thought aside. They needed to forge ahead. As they made their plans, Jake's mind darted back to the prosecutor's words, "No one will believe you." That statement gnawed at him, challenging his resolve. What if they failed? The possibility of ruin danced sinisterly in the back of his mind, intertwining with his fear of disappointment. Failure here wasn't just a setback. It could cement a perception that ruined their chances forever. "We have to be calculated," Jake said, pulling himself out of spiraling fears. "If we stage this wrong, if we go in half-cocked, it could backfire. We need to build trust, every ounce of it, and gather documented evidence alongside testimonies." "What if we start with the most credible ones?" Sam suggested, flipping through contact lists on his phone. "The guys who have nothing to lose but everything to gain by speaking out." "Exactly," Jake affirmed. He could see the determination reignite in Sam's eyes, mirroring his own. As they strategized, Jake felt an evolution within himself, an emerging version of a leader, one who could guide rather than merely follow. He was shedding layers of fear, revealing the core of someone willing to confront the darkness head-on. Every tactical decision pushed him further away from the doubts that had long haunted him. Revisiting the communication logs became essential, as Jake recognized this was more than collecting evidence. It was about restoring dignity to their names. It affirmed his growing instinct as a catalyst for change. Just as the meeting drifted into a tangible plan, a knock echoed through the wooden door. The Admiral stepped inside, a frown creasing his brow. His demeanor suggested heavy thoughts weighing on him, the unwelcome burden of an impending revelation. "Gentlemen," the Admiral began, the gravity in his voice foreshadowing something significant. "We need to discuss the repercussions of our next steps. The truth is going to put a target on our backs." Jake's heart raced with a mix of anticipation and dread. Had they underestimated the stakes? Would unveiling the truth magnify their peril instead of providing an escape? The revelation loomed, and in that moment Jake's resolve mingled with trepidation. He could sense the storm on the horizon. They would need to brace themselves for what lay ahead. Would their quest for justice end up sealing their doom? Jake's mind buzzed with the Admiral's warning. The implication hung heavy in the air, a palpable weight that pressed down on him. They were entering a battle, not just for their own lives and reputations, but for a truth that could challenge an entire system. The thought of a target on their backs was both exhilarating and terrifying. What if taking this risk only brought their resolve to the brink of destruction? "What do you mean?" Sam asked, his voice slightly trembling as he turned toward the Admiral. "I mean that revealing the truth in the way you're suggesting will not only attract attention, but could also provoke those who want to silence you permanently." The Admiral replied, his tone clipped. "You think you're fighting for justice, but there are powerful interests at play. This is not just an internal matter. There are forces that want to keep the truth buried." Jake's heart sank into his stomach. He had hoped for guidance or support, but instead he felt the ground beneath him crumbling. How could they be expected to pursue justice when the very framework of their mission was plagued by corruption? Yet, buried beneath the dread, a stubborn flame of determination flickered. He realized this was about reclaiming not only their past, but the ethos they had sworn to protect. "We understand the risks," Jake found himself saying, his voice firmer than he felt. "But we've got to try. We can't just let the truth slip away because it's inconvenient." The Admiral's brow furrowed deeper. "There is a line between bravery and recklessness. You must be prepared for the ramifications if you step beyond it." "Maybe recklessness is sometimes necessary when facing overwhelming oppressors," Sam interjected, his fierce gaze fixed on the Admiral. The tension crackled in the room, a clash of ideals where fear met courage. Jake pondered for a moment, feeling the weight of every decision broaden out like ripples in water. Would standing firm behind their convictions reveal a strength they hadn't yet discovered? Or would it lead them to sacrifice everything for a fight that could destroy them? "I need to think," Jake said, his voice quieter now. He stepped away from the table, needing to process the gravity of their next steps. Emerging as a leader meant navigating the vast unknown, balancing the weight of his choices, and forcing himself to confront layers of himself he had never wanted to face. He paced back and forth, muscle memory kicking in, a physical manifestation of his torment. The Admiral's words echoed in his mind. "Prepare for the ramifications." He felt on the cusp of potential transformation, ready to embrace a truth not just for himself, but for all who had been wronged. This was no longer a mere fight for redemption. It was a catalyst for a profound awakening about who he truly was. Taking a deep breath, Jake approached the table again. "I know we need to tread carefully," he began, each word deliberate. "But we also have to facilitate a place where we regain control of our narrative. That might mean making some uncomfortable alliances and taking innovative approaches." Sam nodded, a flicker of hope igniting within him. "Maybe if we can leverage media attention, it could work in our favor. Public scrutiny might provide the protection we need. It's risky, but if we're careful—" "If we're careful," Jake echoed, invigorated by the thought, as if a switch had flipped inside him. What if the only way forward was to begin acting like the architects of their own fate? Each informed step, each calculated move, could open doors they hadn't realized existed. The echoes of their plans swirled around them like an incantation, as Jake could sense a reality solidifying beneath his feet. Bravery might involve stepping into the unknown, but they would do so with purpose. Jake looked at Sam, determination etched on his face, and then back to the Admiral. "We're all in this together. If we fall, we fall forward. If we fight, it's on our terms." As the Admiral studied them, Jake could see the carefully concealed admiration spark in his eyes, though it was quickly suffocated by concern. They had ignited a flicker of hope, but risked plunging into a hurricane of chaos. Just as they began discussing possible strategies, Jake's phone buzzed with an incoming message. He glanced at the screen, his pulse quickening. It was from a former teammate, someone whose silence had been deafening. Was this the sign they desperately needed, or the beginning of a deeper peril? The air thickened with anticipation as Jake read the words. "We need to talk. It's about what happened that night." What had he just opened the door to? Would this be the pivotal moment leading them to uncovering layers of betrayal, or a trap set to ensnare them further? The next move was crucial, but Jake sensed that every answer they sought could unearth treacherous secrets. Would this lead them closer to the truth or further into the abyss? Jake's heart raced as he held the phone, the screen illuminating his face against the dim lights overhead. The message taunted him with its suggestion of revelations lurking just beneath the surface. "What happened that night?" echoed through his thoughts. A phrase twisted in layers of mystery and dread. That night had bathed him in shadows and a weight he yet couldn't fully grasp. "Jake?" Sam's voice pulled him back, and Jake's grip on reality tightened. He looked at Sam, determination and fear warring in his gaze. "Can we trust this person?" Sam's voice wavered slightly, revealing his own inner turmoil. What if they're still tangled up in whatever is going on? Jake hadn't an answer for his friend. Trust was both a necessity and a luxury, a tightrope walk they were perilously balancing on. Assembling the pieces of their mission, he felt the pressure building inside him, a compulsion to act yet hesitating at the precipice. Would their next move bring truth or destruction? "I can't ignore this," Jake admitted, his voice steady now, as though the very act of saying it solidified his resolve. "We need to meet them, even if it puts us at risk. Knowledge is power, and any lead that takes us closer to the truth could tip the scales in our favor." "I'm with you," Sam affirmed, though his expression betrayed a flicker of concern that mirrored Jake's own unease. Not for the first time, Jake recognized how their fates were intertwined. Sam's determination bolstered his own, yet the doubts loomed larger by the minute. Turning back to the Admiral, Jake summoned courage. "Can we secure protection before we move forward?" The Admiral remained silent for a moment, weighing their fate in his calculation-laden mind. "Protection will be a challenge," he finally replied, "but I'll put the word out discreetly. If you choose to meet, you must be ready for anything." "No more half measures," Jake insisted, a sudden boldness rising within him. "If we're doing this, we need to go all in." The Admiral met Jake's gaze, and for the first time he saw a flicker of respect clouded by concern. "Then you're prepared for anything, including the possibility that they may reveal not just truths, but lies that threaten your very foundation," he said pointedly. A knot twisted in Jake's stomach as he contemplated the weight of those words. The truths they sought could unravel the tightly woven fabric of their lives, revealing threats and alliances they had never anticipated. He stood on a precipice, a man thrust into the chaotic unknown. He felt the raw intensity of it coil within him. "I'll meet them this evening," Jake declared, conviction sharpening his resolve. "Time to stop reacting and start acting. We'll obtain everything we can. No more waiting for the right moment. This is it." The Admiral nodded, and Sam shot Jake an encouraging glance as they moved toward the door, adrenaline surging through every fiber of their being. Each step felt like a journey into a sharper slice of reality, the stakes pressing down on them like a heavy fog. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world into shades of uncertainty. Jake's focus honed in, narrowing down to one pressing thought. This was not merely about uncovering the truth, it was a journey that would define them. He could feel the weight of expectations heavy on his shoulders, yet he welcomed it. This crisis was their crucible, a transformative moment that could forge them into something they had yet to fully comprehend. They arrived at a small cafe, the kind thriving on whispers and secrets. Jake scanned the room, senses heightened, absorbing every detail, the subtle shifts in the crowd, the anxious gestures of nervous patrons. He sensed that the very air buzzing with unspoken tension could uplift them or engulf them. As he approached the clandestine meeting point, a revelation hit him. Behind the thrill of the chase lay an equally terrifying truth. He might learn more than he bargained for, challenging his perception of loyalty and sacrifice. Would he emerge a champion of justice, or would he be forced to question the very core of the relationships he valued? The door swung open, and a figure stepped inside. Jake's breath hitched as recognition washed over him, an old friend who had become estranged, the one figure he had never expected to see here. Jake stood at the crossroads of truth and betrayal, on the brink of a revelation that could forever alter his path. "What have you brought me into?" The words hung in the air, thick with tension. This meeting could either ground him in reality or shatter everything he believed. But either way, one thing became clear. The lines were drawn, and he was about to confront the echoes of his past. Would he dance with shadows, or would he harness the light? As the figure took a step forward, Jake was reminded that sometimes the most profound truths come wrapped in chaos. What awaited them in the shadows of that cafe, and would Jake be able to manage the weight of revelations that surfaced? Jake's mind raced as he took in the sight of his estranged friend standing before him. A ghost materialized from a life he had attempted to leave behind. Warmth battled with anger inside him, a mix of nostalgia and unresolved resentment swirling like a tempest. 1,000 unspoken words lay between them, unearthing feelings he thought he had buried long ago. "Sam, this is Alex," Jake finally managed to say, tension coating his voice. The memories flooded back, the laughter, the camaraderie, the fateful decisions that drove them apart. "What are you doing here? Why now?" Alex's gaze was steady, but Jake could detect the flicker of vulnerability beneath the surface. "I heard rumors. Wasn't sure I'd find you, but here we are." "Isn't it risky for you to be here?" Jake asked, scanning the crowded cafe. Doubt coursed through him. He had envisioned a professional discussion that would lead them closer to the truth, not a reunion steeped in unresolved tensions. "I know what you're after, Jake. It's not just the whispers anymore. It's something bigger. And if you're involved, you need to understand that risks are part of the game." Alex crossed his arms, a defensive stance that emphasized their shifting dynamics. "But trust?" Jake questioned, his heart pounding. "What about trust? You disappeared without a word, and you expect me to believe you're on my side now?" A silence fell, heavy with unanswered questions. Sam shifted uneasily beside Jake, sensing the undercurrents of conflict brewing. This wasn't just about gathering intelligence anymore. It was about rebuilding fractured bonds and grappling with betrayal. "I know I messed up," Alex replied, his voice low. "I had my reasons, Jake, but I'm willing to help you now, willing to expose what's lurking in the darkness." Apprehension churned in Jake's gut. Could he afford to trust Alex? What assurances did he have that their paths would not again diverge into shadow? Yet the prospect of assembling fragmented truths stirred something deep inside him, a desire to reclaim agency, to harness the chaos instead of being ensnared by it. Sam stepped forward, his expression mirroring Jake's internal struggle. "Jake, you've always said knowledge is power. Maybe we need to hear him out." Jake exhaled slowly, weighing his options. The stakes were no longer abstract. They were embodied in Alex's presence. "Fine," he said reluctantly, "but let's keep this light on. No secrets, no hidden agendas. We're all in this together." As they gathered at a secluded table, Jake's mind oscillated between hope and skepticism. He felt the weight of unresolved expectations clinging to him like a shroud, but the connection with Alex sparked an unfamiliar energy. "What do you know?" Jake pressed, his tone descending into urgency as he began to piece together this complex puzzle. Alex leaned in, lowering his voice. "There's a network. Police, officials, colluding in ways you can't even imagine. They've been covering their tracks, and the last thing they want is for you or me to dig deeper." Jake's heart raced. With each revelation, the layer of deceit wrapped around their reality grew thicker. If Alex spoke the truth, it was a call to arms, a chance to dismantle the very structure that sought to silence them both. "Then let's take them down," Jake found himself declaring, the fire of conviction igniting within him. The path was hazardous, but somewhere in that risk lay the power of clarity, the potential for transformation. A deep-seated resolve coursed through him, carving out his purpose. This crisis, this moment, could carve out Jake anew. Stepping into the fray wasn't merely about fighting a battle, it was about shedding the remnants of a past burdened by uncertainty. But as they plotted their moves, the ambient tension around them thickened. Nothing ever stayed simple, and the unwelcome reality whispered that dark days lay ahead. Jake's instincts pinged, the ground beneath them shifted unpredictably. And then, before the words left his mouth, he could feel it, the impending storm. "Were you followed?" he asked, recalling the urgent urgency of Alex's wild eyes. Just as the question left his lips, a shadow loomed at the cafe entrance, a figure that instantly clawed at Jake's instincts, leaving him acutely aware that danger had arrived. What secrets did the looming figure hold, and could they possibly threaten everything he was striving to reclaim? The figure at the entrance was ambiguous, an edifice of uncertainty that sent a shudder of apprehension skittering down Jake's spine. As it moved closer, an unsettling familiarity prickled at the back of his neck, igniting fragments of the past he had tried to forget. It was a reminder of how quickly ties can tighten, wrapping around one's throat like a noose. "Stay calm," Jake whispered, the words slipping from his lips as he focused intently on the intruder, a well-dressed man with a placid demeanor that whispered deception. The stranger's presence exuded authority, a mask of confidence that reminded Jake of the complacency that sometimes cloaked corruption. "What is it?" Alex's voice was taut with tension, his eyes darting toward the figure that had invaded their sanctuary. "Dunno yet. We'll have to play it cool," Jake replied, forcing a casualness that seethed beneath the surface. In that moment, he recognized the stakes had risen dramatically. This wasn't merely about assessing Alex's reliability anymore. It was about safeguarding their efforts against forces that sought to blanket the truth in darkness. Jake's mind raced as he analyzed the man's approach, each step deliberate and confident. He ignored the heat pooling in his belly, a toxic blend of excitement and fear, choosing instead to lean into the instinct honed through years of maneuvering within complex webs of manipulation. The possibilities of confrontation danced before him, igniting an urgency that pushed him forward. The stranger settled near the counter, his attention veering toward Jake and Sam, and then mooring on Alex. A flicker of recognition crossed his face. It was subtle, but unmistakable. They had crossed paths in another life, one that Jake had fought long and hard to escape. "Why are you here?" Jake murmured, an underlying threat woven into his tone. He needed to stake his ground, to show that he wouldn't be weakened by mere presence alone. As the man leaned against the counter, he smiled, an uninvited grin that screamed menace before turning toward their table. "Just passing through," he replied, deliberately lacing his words with an irony that penetrated Jake's cautious shield. Jake caught Sam's worried glance. He understood that the weight of unspoken dangers filled the atmosphere around them. Could threats be averted through dialogue, or would this encounter escalate into conflict? "Let's not get into details here," Alex said abruptly, breaking the tension that threatened to erupt. His instincts matched Jake's, a shared understanding that danger often came swathed in the veil of charm. The man tilted his head, intrigued. "But without details, what's left to discuss? You're all in quite the web, aren't you?" His tone dripped with amusement rather than malice. Jake clenched his jaw, the realization dawning that this wasn't a mere chance encounter. The game was afoot, and they were no longer simply hunters. They had become the hunted. "Who sent you?" Alex's tone shifted, turning staccato and shake-riddled. For the first time, vulnerability twinged beneath Alex's bravado, and Jake felt the fracture within their atmospheric pact of strength. "Just a concerned citizen," the man creaked, stepping closer. "But I think it's time you understood. Problems don't take a holiday, gentlemen." In that moment, clarity ignited in Jake's mind. This confrontation wasn't just an obstacle, but a tipping point, a shift that could mold his trajectory forever. With intuition sharpening to a razor's edge, he realized that outward appearances masked a deeper conflict, a collision of ideologies and ambitions harshly at odds. As he fought against the thoughts swirling in his mind, strategies he could employ, moves he could anticipate, Jake understood that the true challenge lay not just in navigating this immediate threat, but in forging the next step in his evolution. The world had been playing a game he hadn't chosen, yet now, as the weight of his purpose pressed against him, he was ready to redefine himself within it. One righteous act at a time. But the man's eyes glinted with an unsettling truth that sent prickles down Jake's spine. Soon you'll wish you never pulled on this thread. The threat hung in the air like an ominous cloud, propelling Jake toward a crossroad of choices that would either resist or extend his integrity. He sensed the forces assembling around them, deception, betrayal, and the urge for revolution coalescing into something tangible. And amid it all was the looming question. How far was he willing to go to reclaim not just the truth, but the very essence of his identity? With breaths that quickened, Jake could feel the game truly beginning, but one thought echoed fiercely in his mind, sharpening his resolve. What darkness awaited them within the tangled web they sought to unravel? The cafe, once a sanctuary of whispered intentions and burgeoning alliances, brimmed with urgency as Jake faced the figure just steps away. The neat lines of a tailored suit, the easy arrogance of a man accustomed to slipping through the cracks of morality. The air crackled with tension. It was now or never. "Let's cut to the chase," Jake said, steadying his voice, feeling the weight of leadership crystallize around him. "We know there's more at stake here than mere appearances." "What do you really want?" The man smirked, a glint in his eye that made Jake's gut churn. "What I want? Isn't that the question of the hour?" he replied smoothly, leaning in closer. "But you, my friend, seem oddly naive about the game you're playing. I'm here to remind you that the truth can unravel like a tapestry, exposing even the most well-guarded secrets." Sam, never one to miss an opportunity for vigilance, shifted in his seat, eyeing the man warily. "You've got a funny way of showing concern," he shot back, a challenge lacing his words. Jake felt the atmosphere thicken, aware that the thin veil of conversation could shatter at any moment. He knew the risks of pushing too hard, yet standing down felt like a betrayal. "So, what's it going to be? Are you here to intimidate or to enlighten us?" The man chuckled, taking a moment to enjoy the tension he had injected into the space. "You think you're the hero in this story, don't you? But sometimes the hero loses sight of the bigger picture. These systems you're tampering with aren't as fragile as you might think." His words sent a shiver down Jake's spine, a recognition that this wasn't just a casual meeting, but a prelude to a greater challenge, a battle between ambition and ethics that stretched beyond personal grievances. Before Jake could respond, Alex clenched his jaw, the tension in his posture clear as he pushed back. "That may be the case, but we're not playing for your side anymore. If systems are rigged, we intend to expose their rot." The man's expression soured for a fleeting moment before returning to curiosity. "And at what cost? You two, playing the hero against powerful forces, should understand that this will have consequences. Don't say I didn't warn you." Jake realized the man stood at a precarious intersection of power and warning, and despite his bravado, the uncertainty churning in his gut reminded him that fear often masked deeper truths. "Whatever happens next, we draw the lines," Jake retorted, a newfound strength surging within him. "We are defining this narrative now." The man studied them, his playful facade slipping to reveal a hint of irritation, as if Jake's conviction both surprised and rather amused him. "Then forge ahead. But don't forget, the ground can shift beneath your feet, and your allies may wear masks you never imagined." With that, the man turned on his heel, gliding toward the exit, leaving behind a gathering storm that crackled with unfinished intent. As the door swung shut behind him, silence enveloped the table like a fog, a thick blanket of uncertainty coiling tightly around their intentions. Jake froze, thoughts racing. Behind every challenge loomed the shadows of betrayal, but the same shadows illuminated the path toward truth. "We need to escalate this now," he declared, grounding his resolve with arms crossed. A steely determination wrapped around him like armor. "The truth will not be silenced. Jake, we can't afford a misstep," Sam interjected, concern etched into his features. "We have people to consider." "I know that," Jake shot back, channeling his frustration into a powerful push. "But we're already in. There's no turning back. Whispers are already growing. They'll either protect us or bury us if we let them." The weight of his words filled the room, igniting the flame of urgency buried deep within them. Alex nodded, the vulnerability of their former relationship short-circuiting into a renewed purpose. "Gather intel, reach out. We're looking for anyone who might still care." With each person hinted at, Jake felt the pieces falling into place, a collaboration forming as strategies ignited among them like matches catching flame. Hope intertwined with risk. As they began outlining a plan, a sense of clarity emerged. They were no longer trapped in a web of passive acceptance. They were shaping the course of their narrative, the transformation pushing them toward resolution. Late that night, as shadows lengthened and enveloped them, Jake stood at the precipice of personal growth. He was no longer merely clinging to a past stained by fear and doubt. He was a man committed to change, a leader rising from chaos and conflict, ready to reclaim everything he held dear. By dawn, the sun would shine on their choices. It illuminated a path toward reclamation. They would expose the betrayal that lurked like a lion in the tall grass, ready to pounce. Jake felt the very essence of his identity ignite, transforming vulnerability into stalwart resolve. This was the moment when past tensions melted into hardened determination. The pursuit of justice was a powerful catalyst for change, and their journey towards honor was on the cusp of emergence. In that moment, surrounded by those brave enough to dive into the chaos with him, Jake tasted the nectar of true empowerment. It was the forming of warriors in the face of adversity, the raw potential to redefine not just their lives, but the legacy they would forge together. Each thread woven into the fabric of their shared fight would remind them that without truth they would find no resolution. At last, having risen through their fears, Jake knew that the ultimate prize wouldn't merely be victory, but the solidification of self, his metamorphosis into the embodiment of integrity they had long sought to uphold. And as dawn broke, an unyielding resolve coursed through his veins, illuminating the path ahead. Now was the time to act. The world awaited their story, and they were fiercely prepared to tell it. Do not hesitate. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It truly makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending below. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to support us, and don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of these actions.